Welcome to you all to the sixth in our series of conversations around faith, wisdom, and spirituality. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by the very Reverend Susan Brown, former moderator, convener of the Church of Scotland's Faith Impact Forum, parish minister, currently working in the Borders, and we'll pick up on some of what she is doing in conversation in a moment or two. Part of her remit just now is in worship development. And so to get us all tuned in to thinking on some of those things, let's just spend a moment on our own thinking. What comes to mind when we think on the word worship? We use it a lot around the church, but what comes to mind when we think on the word worship? Just take a moment on your own with your own thoughts, and if you'd like, maybe pop something into the chat, but don't hit that enter button quite yet until I tell you. What comes to mind when you think on the word worship? Okay, now you can hit enter, and we'll see a flurry of thoughts around worship, and I'll spell correctly what I was writing there. Okay, and maybe just have a wee scroll up and see what others are saying. Okay, well, we'll maybe come back to some of those thoughts in a moment. Welcome to you, Susan. I shall add you to the spotlight. You're in the spotlight now. Welcome to you. Just to get us started, tell us a wee bit about yourself. Who is Susan Brown?
Crumbs. I'm obviously badly in need of a haircut, so not just the first lockdown that's left me looking like a shaggy dog, but this one too. Who am I? Yeah, well, I'm now getting towards retirement, but not yet there. And I've been a minister for a long time, since I was ordained in 1985, I think it was. Yeah, so that's a long time now. But I was only 25 at the time. So she says by way of excuse. Yep, I was born and brought up in Pennycook, just outside Edinburgh. But all of my ministry until September of last year has been in the Highlands. So first of all in the Black Isle and then up in Dornoch. So this is new territory for me down here in the Borders. So I'm married, if that helps, and I've got a couple of kids and a few borrowed ones too.
Thanks. You mentioned Dornoch Cathedral, and prior to that, you were in a more rural context, as you are now. What would be some of the big differences you see around worship, faith, spirituality? Are folk wherever they are, or are there differences that you would say in the different communities?
I think there are differences. I don't know how many will hear it from different parts of the country, but I found going to the Black Isle to be quite different from growing up in the Central Belt. For a start, in the Central Belt, whenever you announced communion in the 80s, people would come out the woodwork and they would all turn up. The first time I announced communion in Killernan, nobody came because no one in the Highlands was good enough to join the church. So they didn't actually come. So that was the biggest difference I saw when I first arrived. But we soon got them going. And wound them up enough to turn up even on Communion Sunday. So yeah, and then but moving to Dornoch, because Dornoch by comparison is a town, rather than in the middle of nowhere, which is what my first charge was. So the people are very different. It's also the kind of place that people retire to. So the average age was a bit older, but our kids were still quite young. And when your children are young, you make contacts and connections much more quickly, because the kids are interacting with other kids and they haul them around to the house, because the manse is always the biggest house, isn't it? So it's got the most space to make most noise in. So you meet people a lot more. But as I say, in Dornoch, the people were more gathered. There were the locals, but there was also a lot of folks who had come to retire to Dornoch or to play golf in Dornoch or whatever. So it was a very mixed bag. And then coming down to the borders, they're different again. I mean, I can't believe in a tiny wee country the size of ours, and it is tiny, that people can be quite so different. But they are.
Yeah. I'd certainly experienced something of the not good enough for communion coming up here to the West Highlands 11 years ago. I've now been here longer than I was in either of my Central Belt congregations. Incredible how time flies when you're having fun. But these have certainly been very changing times for the church. I haven't been ordained quite as long as yourself, Susan, but early 90s, 92, and I've seen a lot of changes. You mentioned there the age demographic at the cathedral, and last week talking with Stuart Cutler, we were thinking that often we say we've lost a generation, and he was saying no, we've lost 2 generations. We've entitled this series Faith, Wisdom, Spirituality. Do you think the younger folk are searching for something spiritual, but just not finding it within the traditional offering of the church?
I think we have a bit of an identity crisis in the church. I think what we have to offer is superb. And door opening stuff, and it's at its best, it's exactly what people are looking for, except people are not quite sure what they're looking for, and in the confusion of in the confusion of the search, they kind of pass by church because they think it's an institution. Alongside all of that, though, you've got the changing attitudes in society, where people are no longer used to thinking about other people in the community or used to doing things within the community. Not so long ago, I went to hear an American theological professory young guy speak, and he said his wife is a minister and went along to her church one winter's day, and there was an old boy clearing the path of snow. So he'd got there before and decided to clear the path. And he said, "I'd never think of doing that." And that, I can't even remember what he lectured on now, but I remember that sentence because that really stuck with me. People are not in the frame of mind any longer to volunteer help. It's not within their frame of thinking. And that's kind of scary, because an institution, or not the institution, but the body of the church is reliant upon people volunteering and people, sticking their head above the parapet or putting their hand up. And to have people who wouldn't even think that was a possibility it's quite mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But that said, we've got other opportunities, because people are kind of looking for something. I mean, I just did a funeral in the crematorium in Melrose, and I'm driving there, a school gate with a big banner outside saying mindfulness classes start soon. People are looking for something that goes a wee bit deeper, but they're not looking to the church for that something deeper.
Yeah.
I suppose, I mean, one thing in Dornoch, though, the academy there, they were very good at welcoming the minister in. And I got the opportunity with fifth years to do a series on Christian mindfulness, because we're conscious that kids from the Highlands were going off to university or to college and coming home quite quickly because they couldn't adapt to what is a completely different way of life for them, where they're not known. And I got the opportunity to do some Christian mindfulness, and that opened the young people were kind of surprised by what Christianity had to offer.
Yeah, I think so often when we start thinking institution and buildings, it's about keeping something very old going for the sake of keeping something very old going, rather than the what's in it for me is actually important. If folk going along to a church service on a Sunday morning isn't actually impacting what they're doing on a Tuesday afternoon or a Thursday evening, then why do it? Yeah. Well, part of your current role is, have I got the title right? Worship development worker?
I don't think it's got a title, really.
Right. part of your role is in worship development. Yeah.
The presbytery have been told that they're only going to get 4 ministers for the whole of Berwickshire and Berwick, which of course is south of the border. But 4 ministers to cover the whole area, and that seemed like an impossibility. And so their presbytery clerk is a guy called Dane Sherard, and Dane had this vision that he's been talking through with the presbytery, and the presbytery as a whole have just signed up to it, where the thought is that you can't have ever expanding groupings of churches, because I mean, it's not working now. It's going to be even less likely to work the more churches you club together. So there's got to be a different way of approaching ministry and how we use ministers and what we do with ministers. And so the Presbytery of Duns has decided that the 4 ministers will be attached to a congregation 1 day a week, and the other days they'll be working across the presbytery. And each of the 4 ministers will have a kind of speciality. So one is worship, one is pastoral care, one is Christian education, and one is mission. And so each congregation should end up with a specialist minister taking them through specific things to help them to do things themselves, basically. So my role as a worship person is to help all sorts of congregations, because the Presbytery of Duns also said to the general trustees, you've no right to tell us how many buildings we should close. We're telling you, if the congregations are able to keep their building open, want to keep their building open, and have the resources to do so, they should be able to. Never mind your 40% cut. And so the idea is then, if we're saying to congregations, if you want to keep going, you can keep going, then we have to help resource them. So resourcing them in doing, as I say, the pastoral care, and doing their education, and doing the mission, and of course in worship as well.
Yeah, a fascinating model that gets us away from the way it's been. One minister, one parish, one manse, one one everything. It
is completely different, and it's the challenge is just now, of course, we're hybrid. So because we're not able to get any more ministers in place at the moment, so we don't have all 4 strands in operation yet. So we're still working with some parishes who have ministers and many parishes who don't.
Yeah. Here in Lochaber, where Ella and I are, over the years we've occasionally joked about the one parish and all working together, and some of that becomes a bit more of a reality. But that's a fascinating way of journeying forward in shared team.
I mean, we make the argument that it's actually quite Presbyterian, heaven forsake, because it's encouraging the people of God to be the people of God. And we keep talking about everybody being equal and the minister just being one among many, but we give the minister all the responsibility, or we expect them to do things and sit back and wait. And part of that is that ministers expect to be able to do these. So I'm not blaming congregations here. And what I'm saying is ministers take that responsibility as well. And here we are saying, actually, it's time we actually lived out what we say we believe, which is everyone is called by God. Everyone has a gifting. And, it's when the body works together that the body works.
Yeah, which is probably a nice wee link into the other aspect of the church's work that fills your days and your week. You are convener of the church's Faith Impact Forum. So there's something there about what we do in local congregations. It's not just about an hour on a Sunday morning or whenever, but it actually makes an impact in our life and the life of others. At the moment, of course, the situation, the war in Ukraine is something that is on all of our minds, our thoughts and prayers. Tell us a wee bit about the Church of Scotland's engagement and care within that situation at the moment, Susan.
Yeah. There is a lot of engagement, which is absolutely wonderful, on all sorts of different levels. So there are, some very personal links with people in Ukraine, but we're also working with the World Council of Reformed Churches, working with the Council of European Churches. So, we've got voices in lots of different places, but perhaps the most significant thing is through the Reformed Church in Hungary. And they have an aid arm called the Reformed Church in Hungary Aid, strangely enough. And they're still able to get across the border into Ukraine. And they're working with a whole pile of refugees that are trying to walk into Hungary and beyond, Poland and all sorts of places around there. So we asked people in Scotland if they would like to help. And one way to do that was not so much sending clothes and blankets and everything else, which, are needed as well, but by working through the Reformed Church Hungary aid and providing food and goodness knows fuel and everything else that the people need. And so far, I think just yesterday were over 193,700 and odd pounds that folks in the Church of Scotland have raised for the Hungarian aid. And it's going directly into Ukraine. And in fact, just over the border, I had the privilege of being in a place called Bergazats about 4 or 5 years ago. My one and only time that I've been in Ukraine. And this city, this town, actually, the Christian church is the one that does most of the welfare there, because people are in such poverty. The government is not able to cope with everybody. So they run the hospital, they run the fire brigade, they run projects for young mums, single mums, and goodness knows all what. We even have a bakery. And part of our 193,000 has gone to them to help them to try and keep the infrastructure together so that people who are ill get the medicines they need, so that people get fed, so that people get looked after. So it's absolutely fantastic to see it. And our own man in Budapest, Aaron Stevens, is a minister in the Church of Scotland there. The Church of Scotland there is actually being host to people passing through. So it's absolutely run off its feet, I think, with folks sleeping in the church for a few nights at a time before they can get placed on to somewhere else. So, and then there's more links. Our woman in Italy, Fiona Kendall, who works with Mediterranean Hope. That project, Mediterranean Hope, works with refugees who arrive at Lampedusa and has created humanitarian corridors to get them placed throughout Europe. It's done a fantastic job there, and you might have got the oranges just in the new year that some of our refugees picked in Calabria and sent over to Scotland. I have the most fantastic marmalade. But Mediterranean Hope are actually looking to create humanitarian corridors from Ukraine so that people can safely escape. So that's another exciting thing. So we're in there on so many different levels.
Yeah. Just on Sunday there, I was saying to one of my small rural congregations that the £100 that the wee congregation had raised, is now part of, well, I was saying £175,000. Good to hear that it's up again. But we need to share those stories of the real impact that the church is making in our world. I wonder though, often I do hear sometimes, people saying, but that's humanitarian aid. What makes it distinctive when it's the church? How would you respond to that?
I suppose coming through the Reformed Church in Hungary, the networks that we're using are church networks in order to reach the most vulnerable, because churches tend to work with the most vulnerable people. So we're actually linking up with on the ground ordinary people, which is just fantastic. But we're doing it because in God's name, and because God tells us we should love our neighbors, and loving your neighbor means looking out for them and looking after them. And we can you can tie in with 2 years ago, the last time the General Assembly met in person, we had a Ukrainian pastor with us, Geza Kakso, and his wife Dora, and they have 4 girls, and they're in a Hungarian-speaking part of Ukraine, and they've chosen to stay where they are. They took out all the money out their own bank account, and they are trying to feed as many people as they can who are passing through. But they're also, Dora has set up, because there are a few mums around, because the men are not allowed to leave because they're going to get called up. So the men are up to age 60, can't leave the country. So a lot of the families have chosen to stay together. And so part of the aid that we've given to Dora and Geza is for working with families. And they meet twice a week just to help the children to continue to have some kind of normality in the midst of what is absolute chaos. And so they're doing Bible-based activities, and they're doing entertainment stuff, and they're singing, and they're playing, and they're trying to do just kind of regular things as they go along. But that's because we know the church and we're working through the church, we can do it that way.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, stories that need to be told and shared around our congregations. What would be some other current areas of work for Faith Impact?
So the biggest piece is probably around net zero, because we have a target by 2030 that we should try and be net zero as a church, from the tiniest congregation to the General Assembly. So that's a massive piece of work. But we've set up a wee pilot scheme for electric cars so that churches can be charging points. And that offers an opportunity, because while a car's charging, you can make a cup of coffee with somebody, and sit down and have a coffee. You can open a wee cafe, you can whatever. So there's lots of opportunities. So there's a pilot scheme with, I think, is it 20 congregations at the moment? I wouldn't want to swear by that one, but there's that scheme is begun. It's obviously a massive task though, because you have to weigh up what your carbon footprint is and try and neutralize the impact that you're having. The Church of England have produced a fantastic tool for doing that, so we're looking to see if we can nick theirs and adapt it to fit our situation. So that that's a big piece of work. The other big thing that will come to the General Assembly is there have been a group of Church of Scotland ministers meeting up with rabbis to create a glossary, so that when we use words like Pharisee and things like that come up in a lot of, especially this time of year, a lot of the stories around Jesus, we say it, we use the phrases correctly. But it's been fascinating listening, because we've been exploring words together, and what a word means to a Christian and what the same word means to a Jew can be entirely different, even although the context can be, much the same. So it's been a great experience, and Rabbi David Mason will be hopefully addressing the General Assembly when we meet in May. So that's been good fun. There's lots of stuff around human rights, the Human Rights Act that the current government is trying to reform, and the Bills and Borders Act is a big one as well. And that it's incredibly important we get that right, because it has the potential to make us an unwelcoming place at a time when lots of people in the world need a bit of a help and a bit of a welcome. So thinking of Ukrainians again.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing those stories from Faith Impact Forum's work. Can I take us back to you mentioned Dane Sherard. When I was studying early 80s in St Andrews, Dane was doing some incredible work in Buckhaven, and has always been at the front of the sort of enterprising side of the church. Where would you see that there are signs of growth and hope around otherwise small, struggling congregations?
Well, yeah, Dane is a case in point. I mean, he's a one-off in more ways than one. But he has a tiny congregation. He's well retired, but he's offered to look after a congregation called FOGO, F-O-G-O, and it was a little church that was absolutely dilapidated and freezing cold and minging on the inside. That's the only word for it, minging. And Dana has gutted the whole place. It is now high tech. It's got seating. It doesn't have running water, but he's created this sinky thing. I don't know how he's done it, and a cooker and everything else, and just utterly transformed. So the congregation, which had about 3 in it, now has regularly on a Sunday around 40, and it's only got something like 111 people in the parish. So that's a pretty good ratio. And he would say that what matters not more than I think, but what really is important is that people are welcomed, and that the communication is there. So for him, every bit as important as the services is his Saturday missive that he sends around everybody, telling everyone what he's been up to, offers a prayer for whatever's going on around, and then points to possibilities for the future for the congregation. So that is, to him, incredibly important. And he's taken on board, quite literally, this idea that congregations should be leading their own worship. And so of that 40 people or so, they fight to take part in the service, which is just wonderful. I mean, ask for a volunteer and virtually, you find somebody who hasn't put their hand up. They're really enthusiastic and going for it. Still, average age is probably, probably about 50, 60-ish. But there are a few young people, and the recording the services and things has proved a draw for them, because they do the mixing desk and the editing of the films and all the rest of it. But yeah, so that's a good news story. In the place that I'm in, it's quite the opposite. I mean, the folks in Greenlaw here don't seem to like to go to church very much, but it's great because you just use a different way of doing it. So there is a dirty big green in the middle of the village, and so I've taken to having services on the green rather than in the church, and folk hang around because you do that. Go back in the church, and the numbers are not quite as great. There seems to be a big issue about stepping over the threshold of the church.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Hmm.
It's
In here
challenge.
in Spontean, there's a heritage group that are doing a wee exhibition in the church building over Easter weekend, and just reading some of the material that they're going to be exhibiting, a reminder that, you know, prior to the 1820s, the congregation worshipped in the open air. And I was thinking, maybe we need to get back to some of that.
Well, there's
But yeah,
all that stuff about, you know, Forest Church and things like that. We've been looking into that, and
Yeah.
you know, before I left Dornoch, we were doing walk and talks, which were proving great stuff. Volunteer to go for a walk with someone. Actually, you know, there was about 15 of us, but you can split off into groups and you can blether as you talk, and it's just a natural and normal way of talking about things that are important, you know.
Yeah. Yep. I had such a walk recently in Strontian. I enjoyed it all on my own. But we've still got to try lots of different things.
The other thing we tried in Dornoch, and I only managed to do it twice in that last year, was because of, you know, COVID and all the rest of it. We had a prayer walk around the grounds of the church, and I got local artists to do. So the first one was on Genesis, and got local artists to do little installations, and then I matched them with a verse of scripture and a prayer, and you could do a QR code and you would get some music as well, or it would take you to further information about whatever the installation was and stuff. And we had like 15 points around. So that was the first one, was on Genesis. The second one was at Pentecost. And we got them making all sorts, artists making all sorts of instruments and wind-blown things to hang from the trees and from the building itself. And again, scripture verses, but music and sometimes poetry as well, and just got them to do the QR code on their own as they went round. It's great fun.
Brilliant. Susan, thank you so much. Lots of fascinating things. We'll continue the conversation. We'll open it up to others who are joining us live on the Zoom call, but we'll have a wee pause for a wee breakout time just now. In the meantime, thank you very much, Susan.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the breakout time. So we'll continue conversation around faith, wisdom, spirituality, worship, all these things that help us connect with God and with one another. Who would like to unmute themselves and ask a question, make a comment, get the conversation going again?
Can I just ask about the zero rating, or the challenge for us to get down to that? In a rural area, remote rural area, we've got two main challenges, and that's the mileage that we have to do. Even with online worship, it's still necessary for funerals and pastoral issues to travel a distance. And the other is the nature of the buildings, and two present enormous challenges for us to get our carbon footprint down.
Yeah, they do, and that would be the same across the whole of Scotland. Sorry, somebody's just come to the door. That's a dog barking. Sorry about that. The important word here is the net zero, because it's about balancing out. So, you know, if your building is only used once a week, then the chances are that in actual fact, it won't take too much to be able to make it net zero. So, you know, that's kind of worth bearing in mind. I think the fact that we do stuff online is incredibly important and valuable, but nothing can beat meeting in person, can it? Yeah. And things like funerals and things are absolutely necessary. I think what we need to be aware of is, or constantly aware of, is a consciousness of the fact that we are impacting on the world around us, and often it's negatively. how can we and the question is just how can we transform that negativity into something positive? So yeah, maybe we do need to drive to go to a funeral and park, but can we then, instead of driving to a shop for a pint of milk, why don't we hang on a day and make sure we get the pint of milk and the yogurt and the bread that we need, so that you're not making constant trips. So it's about balancing these things out rather than trying to fix everything absolutely. So yeah, just trying to fix everything absolutely. It's not going to be possible for us given the average age of many of the buildings, but it is possible for us to get there in a net sense. So we've had great fun planting trees. So it's good to be able to plant trees. And it's also something that we did. The Church of Scotland planted 2 walnut groves in Ukraine about 4 years ago to create employment for people around Dora and Geza's village, in fact, the couple I was talking about earlier. So, I mean, there are ways of making the balance out.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? You were talking at one point about having charging points at church buildings, and I wondered how that was funded, whether there are grants available or anything like that.
Well, that's what we're hoping to set up, is that there will be grants available to help congregations for the initial costs. The actual charging will be profit inducing, but not great profits. So you should be able to cover your costs and make a little something on the side as well. So it's this startup thing. And at the moment, we're what we called it Project Eve. And we're working with a car leasing firm that usually advertises in Life and Work and ministers. And so it's being done with them. So we're getting it quite good rates at the moment. And the hope is that if this works, then we'll be able to roll that out more widely.
Fantastic. Good stuff.
Yeah. And this year's General Assembly, the moderator will be driven around in an electric car. So it's filtering through all levels of the church.
Best investment. I've got an electric bike. And I love it, but there are an awful lot of hills in the borders.
Was that not where when the electric motor kicks in and you don't notice the hill?
Yeah, right.
I was just thinking, if the moderator's being driven around in an electric car, they'll have to pick carefully the presbytery that they're visiting this year. There might be problems.
That's just for the week of assembly that I know that has been organised. Yep.
Excellent.
Anything else before we go to the 7 quick questions for Susan?
You were asking her about online worship, were you? At one point, you were sort of talking about it. Yes. It's interesting because you get a different audience, don't you? And the one thing you can do online that you can't do in person is sneak in. Nobody knows that you're there and that you've listened. Because it was quite interesting. One of my neighbours in Dornoch, a young mum, was walking the kids down to school, and she said to me, "Mother half will no say this, but he listens to you every day." And it's just fantastic to think that folk do take that chance, who wouldn't normally step across the doorstep. So it from the very first lockdown, I have done a wee 1-minute thought every day. It was 2 minutes in the beginning. I've cut it in half. But every day since then, so there hasn't been a day I've missed yet. So it could always be a first time. But again, I mean, especially in the first lockdown, there were thousands of people listening. You just think this is silly, but it works. People were looking for something, and it hit the spot at the time. And I think the numbers have kind of leveled down the way, just because the immediacy of things has passed. But there's still a good number of people who tune in to these things. And not just me, I'm not just talking about me, I'm talking, I mean, you had Stuart last week, all these people are tuning in to listen just out of interest, and they can do it.
Yeah.
They can do it safely, and don't, without feeling that they're going to get thumb screws attached and made to come every Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, I've certainly connected with folk from beyond the parishes and around the world, and every now and again I think, is this actually being true to my calling to be a parish minister here? And then someone will make some comment locally, and I think, oh yeah, you are engaging. You're obviously doing it incognito.
Yeah.
No comments or letting folk know. But yeah, it's certainly different ways of engaging around faith, spirituality. I'm sure if the internet had been around 2,000 years ago, that Jesus would have had lots of followers.
I'd have signed up to his podcast anytime. Yeah.
What might be some online resources that you've come across over the last couple of years?
Wow, I think you've been responsible for a few of them, haven't you? Things like It's for Ministry and so on. Spill the Beans has always been good. It's a good publication, and you can access it online with additional bits and pieces. It's been music that's been the biggest thing, isn't it? Trying to get a hold of because I can't sing, trying to get a hold of music for people to sing along to, or to do the hymns and whatnot. So that was a bigger one. But Glasgow University came up with some bits and pieces. A parish church, Coburn. No, where was it?
I know the one you mean. Yeah, there've been quite a few.
Cockpen and Carrington.
That's
it.
The one.
The organist there has a massive database of hymns now, so you can nick other people's stuff. It's quite good.
Yeah. There's certainly been a huge amount of sharing among ministers. You mentioned there It's for Ministry website, a domain name that I actually registered over 20 years ago.
Is that right?
Yeah, but it's really only been in the last 2 years that it's really taken off in terms of connecting ministers in this new digital world. And just recently, thinking about how church has moved online for so many folk. I have registered, I haven't done anything with it yet, but a project for a rainy day to set up It's for Church.org, because It's for Ministry is about leaders and ministers sharing ideas, but a place for sharing the prayer resources, the worship resources, the things that are for the folk who are looking to connect with faith, spirituality, wisdom, and so on.
So, well, if you look up abacus, A-B, and then it's an upside down A, so it's ABVCOS, because Presbytery of Duns is going to be disappearing. So my unilateral thinking was I would change the name. And so we're across Berwickshire. The upside down A in math means for all, and COS, Church of Scotland. And the tagline where it all adds up.
I've seen that on your logo, and I've thought, what's Susan doing with that? Great to have that explanation.
But it will. The website has the aim is to have all the resources for worship up there. So
right, brilliant. Yep. Oh, and we certainly need to build on all of this as we return to church buildings. God forbid that we return to normal, but that we build on all these new experiences and ways of awakening, developing, sustaining meaningful faith. Yeah.
Actually,
Susan,
it makes you think about how we structure worship, though, because I mean, do we need to have cups of coffee so folk can sit comfy? Do we need to break more quickly because folk hit the pause button? How do we do things in a way that that people can connect with, and not on a Sunday just.
Brilliant. 7 quick questions for you as we wind things up. What would you be doing this afternoon if you weren't talking to us on Zoom?
Probably trying to do the order of service for Sunday. That would be
Thank
it.
you.
How boring is that?
What is something that you are very proud of?
Very proud of my kids. I said earlier, we've got 2 and we've got a few borrowed, and it would go for all of them. Got a son who's trying to get published as an author. I've got a daughter who is a nutter, who's going to be doing running mountains, as Jim Stewart did last year. Was it Ring of Steel or something? She's going to be doing that. One borrowed child is in Switzerland, and he came to us when he was 15 and was kind of a wee bit lost and wayward, and is now just an absolute cracker. So he's just great. And our first, another borrowed one, Aaron, he sells minis in Inverness. So if you see a big lanky thing, that's one of ours as well. So just so proud of the people they've become, happy and contented individuals.
Brilliant. What are you reading just now or listening to? You mentioned podcasts. What are you listening to? What are you reading?
I've got into these. Have you seen these before? These little books. This one's A Closeness of God. It's the art and inspiration of Sigurd Kruger. Not that I've got a few, but I've got a few. And Sigurd Kruger does the most amazing artistry, and then just has little thought, scripture, and prayer that goes with each one. I just love it. Look at that picture of utter despair. Just amazing. But and then he just gives you a little bit of thought and a little bit of a wee prayer and things, and I find them really quite inspiring.
Excellent. Brilliant. What's your favorite color?
Jinx. Green. I haven't got a clue.
Green.
I don't think I've ever really taken.
Well, I've
been trying to paint glass stones for Easter Sunday. I think, and I like the green one best.
Brilliant. What would be your favorite verse of scripture?
I forever turn to Psalm 139. I just love the "you're before me, you're behind me, you're around me. Doesn't matter where I go, you're still there." And not in a kind of haunting way, but in a beautifully comforting and reassuring way. So I love Psalm 139.
Brilliant. Yeah. What would be something that fills you with awe and wonder?
I love getting up early, and so the sunrises wherever I've been are the one thing that takes my breath away, and it makes Easter incredible because we always do dawn service at dawn, no matter what time dawn is. And in Dornoch it was beautiful seascapes, but this year will be my first time in Greenlaw, and I've identified the top of which hill we're going to, and we should be able to see the whole village from up there. So it'll be great. And
Brilliant.
Hopefully the sun will shine.
Brilliant. Yeah. A couple of years ago, we had always done a 7 o'clock Easter thing here in one of the parishes, and it coincided with the weekend when the hour changed. So we made it 8 o'clock just so it wasn't too severe. But we've never changed it back to 7.
Oh no, we're 5 to 6 this year. Because sunrise is 6 o'clock, so we should see it coming up. So.
Brilliant. 7th and final question. What would be a charity or good cause that you think is worth supporting?
Gee whiz, there are so many though, aren't there? I suppose right now you can't help but think of the Ukrainian situation and any work with refugees. So I would Mediterranean Hope I would go with, because they do so much.
Where can we find them online? Do you know offhand?
It's
Mediterranean
the
Hope.
Mediterranean Hope. It's our sister church in Italy, the Protestant church there, which is called the Waldensian Church.
Right.
And they run Mediterranean Hope, and Fiona Kendall is our mission partner from Scotland, who works with them, just about to start on a new contract with them. They absolutely love her, and she's doing an amazing job.
Brilliant. When you're watching the recording, there'll be a mention of the website where you can
Excellent.
find out more.
Well, there's
about
some beautiful, really
Mediterranean.
cool drawings on there as well, drawn by one refugee. Stunning things like, you know, a pair of hands holding up a boat above the sea, you know, and stuff. Just amazing stuff.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for giving your time to us this afternoon and sharing in this conversation.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining in, everybody. Yeah.
Thanks, me too.
To all who are joining live on Zoom just now, and to all who are watching the recording, thank you for sharing with us. Next week, the 12th of April, we have the 7th and final of these Tuesday afternoon conversations. I say final, I'm sure I'll be doing more of them, but in this wee series we end next week, and Sally Foster Fulton, Head of Christian Aid in Scotland, will be our guest on that occasion. Until then, thank you very much for being here. God bless you all.
Bye.
Thank you.